and gentlemen. Welcome in the Ulma Museum, Family Museum of Poles saving Jews in World War II in Markowa. We are here for a discussion with Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki. Today we have also Undersecretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Markowej, and also Vice President of the Institute of National Remembrance, Wykład. So we will start with opening remarks of Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, and then we will continue with an open discussion. So, Mr. Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming to this place. Maybe, as we would have suggested, a couple of statements at the beginning of our meeting. Well, the battle for free history is, and for true history is not the battle for true history only. It's the battle for true history and also for the future, because through explaining history and understanding history, we actually not only eliminate misunderstandings between different nations, people, but also we create a platform to understand each other better, and we can better plan and coordinate future between different nations and between different states. For me, for us, for my government, if I may say so, this is a very important moment, and this is our moment, do or die, because Poland was not complicit as a country, as a nation in Holocaust. Poland was not complicit in Holocaust, and the fact that some people don't know about this, do not understand this, mix facts, or do not have goodwill to understand the truth of the history is very sad to me, but it's extremely important in the coming years, in the years to come, to explain, to talk to our friends in Israel, our friends in the United States, our partners in other countries in Europe. So this is a kind of critical element to understand, that Poland was invaded on September the 1st, in 1939, by Germany. A couple of days before, 23rd of August, there was a Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, so Hitler-Stalin Pact, about invading Poland, And on the 17th of September, the Soviet army invaded Poland, and Poland was occupied from this moment for more than 2,000 days. Different parts of Poland were occupied differently by Germans or Soviets, but it all lasted for more than 2,000 days. And during those 2,000 days, every day 3,000 Polish citizens were killed. During every day of those 2,000 days, at least 10 Poles were killed for helping our Jewish brothers. It cannot be forgotten. All crimes which we condemn, committed by Poles, by Ukrainians, by Jews sometimes as well, independent of their ethnic or national origin, actually, we completely condemn. And I would like to invite all the historians to to Poland from Israel, from Germany, from other countries to make appropriate historical research on everything what has happened during the Second World War. For those who think about the times of the Second World War, please also take into account that the whole country, as it was presented here in the exhibition, was actually completely under dominant power, cruel power of German soldiers, SS, Schutzstaffetten, Gestapo, and other military forces of Germany. So even all the atrocities and all the victims, everything what happened during the Second World War, the responsibility for this is Germany. Has to be attributed to Germany. If we try to attribute the responsibility for what has happened, all the atrocities of war, to the victims, it's actually an affront to the victims and to everybody who was trying to help all the victims, like the Ulma family here in Markowej, near Rzeszów, in southeastern part of Poland, where we are together. So when terrible thugs and bandits attack your home, attack your house, and there are two families living in this house. One family is being almost entirely annihilated, exterminated. This is Jewish family. The other family is eliminated to some extent. And it's also the whole house is put on fire, and some part of this other family was trying to help the first family. You cannot mix the true history. Neither of the two families is guilty or can be held guilty of what is happening. This is extremely important to understand the Holocaust which happened here. Let's imagine, close your eyes for a moment, and let's imagine what the history will look like in 50 years from now, or 100 years from now, or 150 years from now. There were Nazis. Who are these Nazis actually? There were some supporters of those Nazis. Well, where most of Jews were killed? They were killed in general government, which some people say it is Poland. It's a way of describing this territory, because there was no Poland. And in 50 years from now, in 100 years from now, Nazis are no longer there. Will be no longer there. But Poles are still there, hopefully, and Russians are still there, hopefully, and Ukrainians are still there, hopefully. Maybe these people are guilty of what has happened. No, this is our Rubicon. We will not cross. We will not allow anybody to tell Polish death camps. We cannot allow that this is a phrase freely said all over the world, because this is an affront to all the victims cruelly killed by Nazi Germans, by Germans. I was told by the lady a minute ago, who has led me through the whole exhibition, these were actually not even Gestapo or SS German soldiers who killed this Ulma family and other families. These were supportive units, auxiliary units from different places. And by the way, this German soldier who has done this lived very well throughout his life for a couple of dozens of years. A fate which actually was quite common for most of German crimes, all the thugs and bandits who have done this on the Polish soil, what they have done. I said that it's not only about the truth of the history, but because it's also what we have lost. In 1939, we have lost our future. My opponent in the economic sphere, Mr. Balcerowicz, very often says that in 1951, which was the dark communist time back then, GDP per capita in Poland, 6 years after the war, and 6 years of communism, and 6 years of a terrible war, GDP per capita in Poland was higher than GDP per capita in Spain, and much higher than GDP in capita of Korea. And this is the truth. So we have our today's economic life, our social life is determined by what has happened during the Second World War. There is a continuity of responsibility of those, and there should be continuity of responsibility for those who were responsible for what has happened. Because even our development post 1989 was completely determined by 45 years of terrible communist system, the collapse of our economy, complete collapse of our economy, and therefore back then we had to, or this is what the economists thought back then, that Poland had to sell our assets, sell our our companies. So we have sold them, and half of our industry today is in the hands of our foreign partners. But not half of the Spanish history is in the hands of foreign partners. Not half of Korean industry is in the hands of their foreign partners. This is because of the Second World War. For those who would like to close this chapter, and by the way, close it in a completely falsifying way and manner, we have to say, no, it's beyond my imagination that I could agree on this, because it would be completely inappropriate. Those unthinkable losses during the war and loss of our independence, loss of our independent development is determining our today's fate. I can give you one other example. There is a very sad place in the Czech Republic called Lidice. Many of you must have heard about this. This is a village which was annihilated, exterminated. There was a pacification, or complete pacification of this village by Germans. In Poland, we have 800 such villages. 800 such villages as Lidice. We are not good at telling the history. We were not good. We were not good in presenting those terrible atrocities of war and the cruelty of occupation on our soil. But we will do our best for the victims. Also for 3 million Jews, for 3 million non-Jewish Poles. All of them were Polish citizens. 6 million people killed during the Second World War. So we will never agree to be treated as a state or nation complicit in Holocaust. This is our to be or not to be moment, I would say. But let me also state this very, very strongly. Historical research not only must be allowed and not only must be completely free, but I would like to support it. I would like to invite all the historians who would like to drill more deeply into the terrible times of the Second World War. And everybody who would like to help us and help our Israeli friends to discover the whole truth of all the perpetrators, also of Polish origin, Russian and Ukrainian and Jewish origin. Everybody has to come, and everybody is invited to come to Poland and do those research, because there was too little, too late, and too subjectively done from different angles, subjective from different angles, and not so much from the Polish angle, because there was no Poland for 45 years. Even the pogroms after the Second World War, there were communist provocation. So again, a little bit not dissimilar to what has happened during the Second World War. For everything what has happened after 1989, independent Poland is responsible, and the government of Poland is responsible. But what has happened post 1939 to throughout 1944-45, this is the responsibility of Germany, and what has happened in communist Poland post 1945, this is the responsibility of communists. And if you want to put it as a responsibility of a country, it's Soviet Union and Soviet Russia. Poles and Jews were living together for more than 600 years. Actually, we have 1,000 years of common history. And it has to be viewed as such. In post, many of you, if not all of you, know the history of the 15th century, 16th century. Many Jews were expelled from Spain, from France, from Germany, and they actually found their place here, in Poland, in eastern part of Poland, which is today Belarus and Lithuania and Ukraine, and in Poland. And there were different times, but actually for 600 years they lived happily together with many other ethnic groups in Rzeczpospolita, in the Polish Republic. And unique culture of Polish Jews, even with the unique language, the English language, it all has been completely destroyed, annihilated by German Nazis. This is the responsibility of perpetrators. Poland is also active in maintaining the remembrance of the concentration camps. There were many concentration camps. In Austria alone, there were 47 concentration camps. You know how many concentration camps as a monument, as a place of remembrance are still there in Austria? One. Mauthausen and Gusen. There is one. In the other places, there are some housing estates, there are some other places, commercial places. Can you imagine anything like this in Poland? I cannot. As long as I have influence on this, I will never allow for this. I will always support all those places to be venerated. Johnny Danes, who is here with us, recently told me a story about Ciepielu. We are going to make this place also a public place, because it's an obligation for the families who are trying to rescue the Jews. By the way, the grandfather of husband of my spokesman of my government, Mrs. Minister Joanna Kopczyńska, was actually also is a righteous among the nations, and was actually in Czepielu rescuing Jewish families, because there were many other Polish families trying to save or saving Jewish families. As here in Markowa as well, there were Polish families who still were giving shelter, were trying to save, and were saving Jewish families here in this place after the 24th of March 1944 tragedy happened, this atrocity happened on this terrible day. So we will support the remembrance. I hope we will support it forever, because for the victims of this terrible war, we owe this to those victims, to venerate, to foster research, and to do everything to support the living memory and remembrance of what has happened. In Dachau, I think, German government has turned some part of Dachau, or so I read, into a camp for refugees. Well, refugees have to live somewhere, but not in the place where 100,000 people were brutally killed, or more, because we cannot be sure how many people were killed there, were murdered there. So I stop now. I know you might want to have questions about the whole situation. I try to explain this by talking to diplomats and talking to journalists. But I would like to thank you again for taking this effort, coming to Markowa, to this small village, to actually look at this exhibition, think about this, what has happened during the Second World War, because it is extremely important for us today, for those victims, but also for us today and for us tomorrow. Thank you.
We have about 25 minutes for the discussion. So
Mr. Prime Minister, could you please explain us the goal of your visit here today? Is it a start of some more comprehensive action of historical information about Poland and the issue? And second question, do you agree that Polish historical policy, information policy for last decades hasn't been enough consistent and enough clear?
Well, our historical policy was completely upside down, was completely either inexistent or terribly wrong very often. Not all of this, of course, but lots of this, because like I can give you an example. One of the most important dailies in Europe, in Poland, in 1994, during the 15th anniversary of Warsaw Uprising, they have created, they have actually, they have issued a front page article where they have accused Poles and Polish Home Army of being being complicit in killing Jews, whereas this Home Army, the biggest underground army and the biggest underground state, the state of Poland, the underground state of Poland, actually has given death penalties, death sentences and penalties for those who denounced or murdered Jews. and there were tens of thousands of such death penalties for citizens, for Germans, for Poles, and for other national or ethnic groups. So we have to put lots of efforts to actually discover the truth in the history, to eliminate all the falsifying elements from our history, but we want to do this together with our partners. So I would like to be as open as possible for historians from other countries, because all research, even this, and in particular this part of research, which is discovering also very sad stories and history for Poland, is very much welcome. I would like to support the works on discovering history, which is not yet discovered.
Justyna Pawlak, Reuters. I have a question and a follow-up. If I understood you correctly in the way you described this issue, it's not really about what individuals, what wrong individuals in Poland may have done, or individual Poles may have done, but it's about whether the state is being accused of an organized effort to participate in the Nazi German Holocaust. And then my follow-up question is, you gave us very interesting numbers on how many Poles had lost their lives trying to save Jews during World War II. And we have a bit of information about how many trees are in Yad Vashem, so how many Poles had tried to help the Jews. Do we have any numbers on the opposite side? I mean, how many Poles had denounced Jews, or how many Poles had actually participated in events like Wagner?
To your first question, yes, this is about if organized and systemic involvement by the Polish underground state was there in helping Jews, like Żegota, the Council for Aid, helping Jewish population, Jewish brethren, or they were on the opposite side. So even if in Poland there was a death penalty, you could read it in those Bekanntmachungs here in the museum. Was the only country where there was such a death penalty for people who were helping, even more than people who were helping. Could you imagine a family with children like this one in Markowa? Quality, I would say. So that's a little digression, but a very relevant digression, I would have said. So I believe that it's obvious for everybody that the underground state of Poland and the underground Home Army was very active in helping our Jewish brothers. To your second question, yes, some research indicate that there were at least a couple of dozens of thousands, so between 30 to 50,000 people who were very actively involved in helping Jews. But let me put it in a completely different way. Okay?
I was asking about the other side.
Yeah, I will be referring to the other side as well. There were 100 to 200,000 Jews. 100 to 200,000 Jews, maybe more than this, maybe less than this. It's so sad we cannot give even an appropriate figure, but let's say 100 to 200,000 Jews were saved during the Second World War. Let me put such a statement in front of you. None of those Jews could be saved without help of several Poles. How about this? Can anybody who knows the history of Second World War falsifying this statement. I know the history of Second World War quite well. I'm a historian from my first education. I can tell you, reading hundreds of diaries, memories, statements from the Second World War, this was impossible. So every Jew, every Jewish family who went through this hell of the Second World War could do so only with help of Polish family. So maybe there were no 20 or 30 or 50,000 of them. Maybe there were 500,000 of them. We don't know. Think about this, please. How many of them were denouncing or murdering Jews? I think there were also several dozens of thousands of those. This has to be researched, but some research in detail. But the research I know, the serious research, not some other research, quote-unquote research, indicates that there were probably several dozens of thousands of those who were in those times. Well, actually, this was. Do you know where Auschwitz was? Auschwitz was not even in general government. Auschwitz was part of Germany. In 1939, according to the resolution of Adolf Hitler, Auschwitz and the whole Bezirk was connected with Germany. But that's another little digression. So people under such pressure where denouncing was supported by Germans, by everybody who was in power back then, policemen, civil servants, of course, Gestapo, Wehrmacht, and so on. Many people were actually, so many people were behaving in a very, very wrong way.
I think that Mr. President can add something to
the agreement here and in the world that the Polish story that you told needs to be more widely known. But I think where you find the criticism is this law that's been drafted. And so, first of all, just basically, do you support the law as it's written? And then secondly, it seems to me almost tragic that this subject has turned into a fight between Poland and Israel. And it seems to me it could have been done in a way where maybe you figure out a way to tell this story together. So I'm wondering, first of all, on the law itself, can you tell me where you're at with that? And then secondly, isn't there a better way to tell the Polish story than creating a law to limit speech?
This law is not going to limit the speech, not even one iota. So if somebody wants to do research or tell stories about involvement of individuals, involvement of some crimes, some Polish bandits, is absolutely not only entitled to do so, but the whole historical truth has to be revealed and has to be presented. I support the legislation, I support the bill, but I also support that we do everything possible to clarify the true intentions of this bill. Because the true intentions is not that anybody, not only historians, not only artists who wants to express this or that, came to Poland and said very sad stories about Poles being involved in other atrocities, in Poles being perpetrators. There were Poles and thousands of them who were perpetrators. But by the way, Poland was the only country of occupying, or one of very few countries in occupying Europe, where there was no puppet-like government, like Quisling in Norway or Tiso in Slovakia or Vichy France with Pétain. In Poland there was not. There was such a disdain towards Poles by Germans that the level of or lack of cooperation was is very quickly visible through the pages of books written during the Second World War by people witnessing this, what has happened. So coming back to the legislation, you are right. We have not done sufficiently. We were not good enough. We have not done sufficiently in-depth works and job to explain our case, which comes back to the first question, that 25 years of free Poland, independent Poland, in my opinion, was lost from this very point of view. So we now have to find a way with our Israeli partners and politicians and partners and historians and friends and not so friends, how to collectively work on our wonderful, actually, common history throughout 1,000 years, and in particular the last 600 years, and how to nurture this, how to venerate this, how to support it, and I hope that we will be able to find other ways of clarifying all the misunderstandings, all the gray zone areas in this.
You support the bill as it's written, though. As it's written, you support this legislation.
I support it as it's written, but in the same sentence, I have to say I support also all the clarifications and all the ways of additional explanation for our friends.
Okay. Could you explain whom exactly do you want to penalize by the new law? Because there was also another law, the old one, which also. Yeah.
Maybe the most simple way, the simplest way of explaining this question would be anybody who, as very often was the case, would be saying that there are Polish death camps, Polish Vernichtungslager, Polish concentration camps, in the sense that the state of Poland and the nation of Poland is responsible for this, should be fine, because this is an affront to the victims of this from the Second World War. This was not the case, as the Jews are not allowing to say that there were Jewish concentration camps or Jewish-led ghettos, because even in some ghettos, even if Jews were involved in keeping order in some ghettos, I would never dare to say that that Jews are responsible for this. Here's another example. In the Jewish ghetto in Łódź, Chaim Rumkowski, and the whole story. Most of you probably know what was the story, but I would never say Jews are responsible for those terrible things which have happened in Litzmannstadt, in Łódź. Yeah.
Associated Press Monika Ścisłowska. Minister, there already was a law that banned like untruthful Holocaust speech. So why the need to change it, especially knowing, and Poland knows it very well, that any legislation concerning Holocaust would be a very sensitive subject. And also it was introduced a day before the International Holocaust Day that added to the bitterness, to the let's say, strong response. So why touch something that was, I hope, working?
Because it was not working. This is the first the answer to your first question. And to answer, the honest answer to your second question is that the timing was unfortunate, to say the least. We could have done much better in explaining this and in finding a common ground, finding a common denominator with our Israeli friends. Because I think if we, together with our Israeli friends, would immerse really for a couple of hours in a real discussion, not two monologues, one real dialogue on this very issue which we discussed today, I am convinced that we could have found a solution before, a slightly different wording, which would lead to the same result for us, but would at the same time eliminate all the doubts which now are in the public domain. So, and this is, by the way, which I hope we will be in a position. We will be able to clarify in days and weeks to come.
May I just follow up on what you just said?
Yes.
The president hasn't signed it yet, and the commissions are supposed to be working. What you just said, a slightly different wording. Is that possible before the president signs the law?
The Senate, which our upper chamber, has already adopted the law, so the president can either sign it or veto it or send it to a constitutional tribunal. The president, according to Polish law, cannot change this at this juncture. So the precise answer is no. President can either veto or send it to a constitutional tribunal or can sign it. It's his prerogative today. Okay.
No, but I understand that a delay in time could open doors for a change of the wording.
As far as I'm concerned, the law is adopted. President has to sign it. The law is adopted, but everything what can happen and will happen should happen after the law will have been signed. If the law will have been signed by the president, should be done very quickly with all the openness and goodwill which I have with our Jewish brothers and sisters to actually find appropriate, clear wording, that clear for everybody, that this is not eliminating the freedom of speech, that this is not intervening in artistic liberty or anything like this. It's not the case. It's not the intention. So I hope we'll find a way to prove it.
Matthew Day, the Daily Telegraph. The law was introduced in a way to protect Poland's good name. But are you not worried that the controversy and the damaged relations with key states like Israel has actually backfired and actually it has damaged Poland's name?
I am worried about this. I am concerned about this. But as I said, for me, this has to be a turning point. For me and my family suffered a lot during the Second World War, and as I said, not very humble. I know the history of Second World War quite well. It's beyond my imagination that we can be treated, and that people can, that educated people, some knowledge about what has happened can say Polish death camps, or that they can say things which are completely, which are a complete affront to Poland. Poland was not complicit in Holocaust, not even one iota. The opposite was the case. In 1939, we have changed the history of the world, because had we not been fighting with Germans in 1939, if we were we on the sides of the Germans, it would be very easy for them to conquer Soviet Union, and the history of the world would be completely different. So we have paid huge price. 6 million, our citizens, our independence, our good and solid economic development, our wealth. We have given this to the world, and we cannot agree that some uneducated people say things as they say. But yes, at this juncture, it is also because of lots of misunderstanding, and people do not immerse in the truth of the history and do not make this effort to actually verify, to look into the history. Some very bad sentences and statements are made. I hope this is happening only for a short time, and we will and we will be able to change it also through a dialogue and through actually creating this whole topic in the first place, this whole situation in the first place. Because now, for many people in the United States, in Germany, in Poland, in Israel, and in many other countries, it's very clear that it requires discussion, research, and then the whole truth, I hope, will be revealed and will be presented.
Krzysztof Skórzyński, Fakty TVN. Mr. Prime Minister, you're talking a lot about Polish history. I agree that this is necessary now. But I want to ask you, as my colleague from Daily Telegraph, about the political impact of a new Polish bill. We had the first statement of Department of State. Today we've got the second one, similar to the previous. But the question is easy. What is your recipe for improving relation with Israel and the United States?
I hope that this is only a very temporary weakening of those relationships. I am very much hopeful that we will be in a position to explain our stance, and the relationship will soon improve. But for us, for me personally, as Prime Minister of the government of the Republic of Poland, this is a do or die moment. I cannot agree with people not so people who do not have complete knowledge about what has happened on this soil to say things like Polish death camps. But I am very much hopeful that this is explainable, that this is the thing. This is a thing which we will be able to explain to other governments, because I fully agree with the underlying hypothesis of your question, that the relationships for us are very important. The relationships with Israel are for us very important. For Israel, I think the relationship with the country like Poland, which was abstaining in the voting in the Security Council, in the voting on Jerusalem, and is clearly the country so strongly supporting Israel. It's also a very important moment in the history of our relationship from the point of view of Israel. And also in the relationship with the United States. I hope we, through contacts, through talks to our Jewish partners there, we will be able to better explain the whole situation. Thank you.
Last questions?
Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Prime Minister Jacek Karnowski. In yesterday's speech you mentioned that Poland is defending the truth about who organized and who German death camps and who executed Holocaust, because Poland is defending the truth about Holocaust. I think it's very important, but I think it's also about the truth about Polish story during the Second World War. What you've told us at your beginning speech, and I think we have problem that story. Poland as a country murdered by Germans, invaded from both sides. Brave nation, fighting for 6 years. We lost that story. And do you have any idea how to rebuild that truth, that Polish story about brave Poles who defended, who fought against both totalitarian regimes?
lots of different things should have happened which had not happened, like movies and books and educational curricula in many different places in the world. But yes, I believe that we are fighting for the truth about the Holocaust. I want to fight hand in glove with my Israeli and Jewish friends and partners and Israeli government about the truth, the complete truth, full truth about the Holocaust. How to present heroic, sometimes very often heroic behavior, heroic deeds of many Poles. It's through movies, through different ways of expression, artistic, scientific, otherwise. And it's a good question, because nothing like this has happened during the 45 years of communism, which I can understand, because this was not Poland. This was a country occupied by Soviet Union till 1956, and then there was a country under the Soviet control. But why it has not happened during the 25 years of free Poland, I do not understand. And I would like to repair this, and I think that we will be able to put, not only, by the way, our government has put significant money, 100 million zlotys, to take care forever on Jewish cemetery in Warsaw, the biggest cemetery in Łódź, and we will do this for many other places in Poland to nurture the memory, remembrance of Jewish history here. But I'm also very, very happy that today's Jewish cultural life and Jewish culture is in the state of revival. And the last 2 days, I think 95% of our Jewish Israeli friends would confirm this, what I'm going to say right now, or maybe 100% of them, that the last 2 years of what we have done to support, to connect Jewish culture with today's Poland, to nurture education about Jewish history, is something unprecedented. We've done much more than our predecessors over the period of probably 22 years. We've done this in the period of 2 years. And my commitment is that we will be doing this notwithstanding this current state of affairs, this current lack of understanding, let's put it euphemistically. I will continue this, because I truly believe that the Jewish history here was so much enriching the whole history of Poland and Europe, that we would not be in this position, the whole European history, without Jews. And we also have to put it into history books, and we have to also educate the younger generation about this. So we will do everything possible for younger generation, for generations to come, to understand the true history of Poland, but also of Jews in Poland, and Poland in Europe, and Jews in Europe. Thank you.
Time for the last question.
Karol Dermoros, Polish Radio. Prime Minister, just a follow-up question on rebuilding Polish story throughout the world. What's your opinion on the Polish National Foundation, which is ought to promote our story, but it seems they are not doing this job properly?
Well, they have to speed up. They have to accelerate their activity. But if you ask why their pace is maybe too slow, because nobody is experienced enough, nobody is educated, or very few people in Poland are experienced enough, educated enough in how to do those things, how to appropriately, without doing harm to Polish-Jewish relationships, how to put educational courses, how to put all, how to make all the endeavors to support appropriate picture of Polish-Jewish relationship. But yes, I do believe that they have to actually enter in a completely new phase, so to say, of their activities. The actions have to be now very visible, friendly, agreed with our Jewish friends, and appropriate.
Very quick one from me.
Just to clarify what you said, do you see any room to amend the legislation once it's signed by the president?
But let's first think about all other ways of how we can be on the same hymnship with our Israeli and Jewish friends with regard to the current bill, current legislation. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a personal aspect of this debate to you? Or
Sorry?
is there a personal aspect of this debate to you?
Yes.
Not now, but history of my family during the Second World War was like very much painful, I know also people who were helping, and I know how terribly difficult this was to do so, and risking every day out during the 2,000 days, the life of your children, life of your relatives, life of your husband or wife.
Thank you very much.
Dzień dobry, panie premierze. Nie, jedziemy dalej.